Hey, everybody. Welcome to In Broad Daylight, a solo podcast hosted by me, obviously. I'm Adam Tod Brown. This used to be my solo podcast, and then it was a group effort for a while. And now it's back with just me in the captain's chair once again. If you're a true, then you know In Broad Daylight is also the name of my Substack newsletter. That Substack and this podcast will be conspiring with each other going forward, in that I'll post a shorter free version of this solo podcast on Substack, and paid subscribers will get a longer version. If you're subscribed at Patreon or Supercast, you will get the subscriber version also, and do not have to give me additional money if you don't want to. What is this show going to be? Think of it like a daily news roundup kind of thing, except definitely not daily. I will be gunning for 2 episodes a week, but we'll see. This first episode is going to be a little different in that it's all about sports. Don't leave. When I say that, I mean these are sports related stories. We're not talking about stats and defensive schemes here, just interesting stories that even if you are a sports fan, you probably aren't hearing too much about. This won't be a sports podcast in general, though. I already host one of those. It's called You Don't Even Like Sports, and you can get it wherever the hell podcasts are at. The reason today's episode of In Broad Daylight is so sports heavy is because I did all of this research for an episode of You Don't Even Like Sports that scheduling conflicts would not let me record. I swear I'll get back to talking about how the world is burning next time around. And so here we go. Up first, let's talk about my favorite sport, tennis. While everyone was up in arms about Caitlin Clark very rightfully being left off the U.S. women's Olympic basketball team, another U.S. Olympic team roster controversy got way overshadowed. It's a controversy that also doubles, tennis term, as incontrovertible proof that the American sports media could not give less of a fuck about American tennis. The gist of what happened is that 4 American players, Madison Keys, Francis Tiafoe, Ben Shelton, and Sebastian Korda, all opted to skip the 2024 Olympics in Paris. That was surprising to me, if for no other reason than none of those players ever win shit and should kind of count their lucky stars. They even had the opportunity to be on that roster, which brings me to what I said about American sports media and tennis. Sports Illustrated, one of the longest running and most revered outlets in all of sports, ran a piece about this on a section of their site called Serve, which is dedicated exclusively to the hospitality industry. Just joking. It's about tennis. So you know they care a lot, except they clearly don't, because they blow this story with the first word of the headline. Here's a quote. The top 4 U.S. tennis players opted out of Paris Olympics. Now, the way that headline is worded makes it seem like the 4 highest ranked American players, AKA this country's 4 best players, all opted out of the Olympics, which would indeed be a pretty shocking turn of events, but that's not the case. In fact, the literal exact opposite is true. The actual top 6 U.S. tennis players are, in order, Coco Gauff, women's world number 2, Jessica Pegula, women's world number 5, Danielle Collins, women's world number 11, Tommy Paul, men's world number 12, tied at 4th with Madison Keys, women's world number 12, and Taylor Fritz, men's world number 13. Those are the top 6 tennis players by ranking in the United States. With the exception of Madison Keys, every one of those players will be playing for their respective teams. So rather than the top 4 American players all opting out, what actually happened is 5 of our top 6 players all opted in. What Sports Illustrated means to say is 4 top U.S. tennis players opted out of the Paris Olympics. That's true. 4 of our best. I assumed this was just a typo and that things would be clarified in the actual article, but nah. Here's another quote. Unfortunately for American tennis fans, that includes the country's top 4 ranked players: Madison Keys, Ben Shelton, Sebastian Korda, and Francis Tiafoe decided not to play in the 2024 Summer Olympics in Paris. So again, what they are saying is that the absolute 4 best American tennis players are not going to the Olympics, which is not true. They follow that up with a tweet from tennis commentator Jose Morgado as evidence of their claim, except they obviously misunderstood the tweet. It says Madison Keys, Ben Shelton, Sebastian Korda, and Francis Tiafoe all opted not to play the Olympics in Paris despite being U.S. top 4 players. I do accept that it's a little unclear, but what he's saying is that all of those players are ranked in the top 4 among American men's and women's players. You have to split that down the middle. So we're talking 8 players. What they're not saying is that those are the top 4, AKA the 4 best or overall highest ranked American players. Can you be forgiven for making a mistake like that? Sure. As long as you're not writing about tennis for a straight up institution like Sports Illustrated on a section of the site dedicated to tennis. And that got me to wondering what tennis aficionado at SI got this story so very wrong. So I scrolled down to the author bio. It was penned by a writer named Pat Benson. And what does Pat do at Sports Illustrated? Quote, Pat Benson covers the sneaker industry for Sports Illustrated's Fan Nation. He also wrote a book about Kobe Bryant's shoes. And that explains it. Even the most casual of tennis fans would recognize that while all the players mentioned in that article are among the best in the United States, they certainly are not the 4 best. I get that tennis isn't the hugest sport in the United States, but it at least deserves better than this from an outlet like Sports Illustrated. Now, if you really want a story about the 2024 U.S. women's national team, we should be talking about the player who is replacing Madison Keys. That would be world number 17, Emma Navarro. We should talk about her and Jessica Pegula, actually, who I mentioned earlier. And the reason we need to talk about those 2 specifically is because with the 2 of them on board, there is zero doubt in my mind that if nothing else, this is the wealthiest Olympic team in sports history ever. Any sport, U.S. men's basketball included. Why? Well, if you follow the NFL or NHL even a little, you probably already know that Jessica Pegula, the 5th ranked women's player in the world and the 2nd highest ranked American player overall, is the daughter of Terry and Kim Pegula, the owners of both the Buffalo Bills and the Buffalo Sabres. At last check, her parents' net worth clocked in at a modest $6.8 billion. They don't call her the richest tennis player in the world for nothing. However, as she has pointed out in the past, she doesn't actually have that money herself. Her parents have it. And that's a fair point. For all we know, she doesn't even get along with her parents and is just out here struggling to survive on the $13 million she's earned playing tennis like the rest of us commoners are. Also, whether she's still the world's richest tennis player is open for debate, thanks to her Team USA teammate, Emma Navarro. Her Wikipedia page kind of dodges her background. The personal life section is exactly one sentence that just says, Navarro is the daughter of businessman Ben Navarro and the granddaughter of Frank Navarro, a former American football player and coach. She is of Italian descent. Yeah? Anything else you want to tell us? Like maybe why your dad and granddad both have Wikipedia pages? It's because Ben Navarro is the founder and CEO of Sherman Financial Group, which owns Credit One Bank. Damn. In fairness to the Pegulas, though, I'm exaggerating when I say Emma Navarro poses a challenge to Jessica's title of world's richest tennis player. You may recall that the Pegula's net worth is estimated to be just under $7 billion. Well, Ben Navarro's is a comparatively impoverished $1.5 billion. This pissant is only the 2,103rd richest person in the world. Why even bother being rich if you're not going to crack the top 2,000? Learn something from your daughter, dude. Was she content to be the 2,103rd best tennis player in the world? Nah, she's number 17. Stop being a stain on the family name, Ben. And hey, let's stick with the Olympics for a minute and talk about a far less wealthy U.S. national team. Women's basketball. There was a whole bunch of controversy surrounding the decision to not include Caitlin Clark on the roster for the 2024 Olympics in Paris. It was the right decision. You can hear me talk about it more on a recent episode of You Don't Even Like This Show called The Caitlin Clark Wars. If you're interested, get it wherever the podcasts are. There is another women's national basketball team, though, the 3-on-3 team. Exactly what it sounds like. Still basketball, but instead of 5 players on the court for each team, there's only 3. I don't understand it either. Unfortunately, an actual tragedy has befallen the women's 3-on-3 team in the form of Los Angeles Sparks rookie phenom Cameron Brink tearing her ACL recently. She was set to be on the 3-on-3 squad, but that injury will sideline her well beyond when the Olympics have come and gone. So someone's got to replace her. Why not Caitlin Clark? Well, for one thing, Cameron Brink is a giant who specializes in defense and plays mostly around the rim. You literally cannot replace her with Caitlin Clark. It would be like losing Shaq and replacing him with Steph Curry. Both great players, but they absolutely do not do the same thing when they play basketball. Same deal with Caitlin Clark and Cameron Brink. They are not interchangeable parts on a team, okay? It's not how basketball works. But what about Angel Reese? She and Cameron Brink are a lot more similar in terms of playing style. And if anyone is going to beat out Caitlin Clark for WNBA Rookie of the Year, it's going to be Angel Reese. So obvious choice, a rookie replacing a rookie. Except nope, again. Even if Team USA wanted to add Caitlin Clark or Angel Reese to the 3-on-3 squad, the rules of the sport would not allow it. As explained by Jack Maloney at CBS Sports, players on the 3-on-3 team have to register with a governing body called FIBA, the International Basketball Federation, if you're Yankee scum like I am. And FIBA assigns each player a ranking based on their performance in FIBA events over the past 12 months. To be eligible for the Olympics, 3-on-3 players have to meet minimum ranking requirements that I won't bore you by explaining in detail. I'll link to the CBS Sports article in the show notes if you want the specifics. But the short version is that Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese, along with lots of other severely talented WNBA players, have no ranking points at all with FIBA. They haven't played in enough 3-on-3 events over the past 12 months, probably because Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese both have been playing all of the other available basketball, mostly nonstop since November of last year. They will probably both appreciate the break when the Olympics finally roll around next month. And the Olympics aren't going anywhere, you know? They will still exist in 2028, provided the world in general still exists by then, which does not feel like a safe bet these days. But speaking of 2028, after Paris in 2024, the next Summer Olympics host city will be Los Angeles, baby, in 2028. Now, while I have no doubt that the International Olympic Committee coming to LA will be the same disaster for poor people and the unhoused as it is when they show up anywhere else. But to the city's credit, they are sidestepping another huge problem that hosting the Olympics usually poses. You see, most cities do not have the necessary sporting infrastructure to accommodate the vast array of sports that make up the Olympics. And it's not like you can just skip the sports you don't have the right venues for. So in most cases, host cities will build new facilities specifically for the Olympics, vowing that they will be put to good use still once the Olympics leave town. They usually don't put them to good use, and as a result, the globe is absolutely littered with abandoned Olympics venues that are still very useful, provided you're filming something set in a post apocalypse universe. Somehow, despite being flush with college and professional sports teams alike, Los Angeles was also planning to build new facilities to host the 2028 Olympics. One example being a temporary swimming venue that was to be built on Dodo Field, which is USC's baseball stadium. But somehow, in the years since that plan was devised, that field underwent some renovations and upgrades that now make it unavailable for Olympic use in 2028. So now all the swimming events are going to be held at SoFi Stadium with seating for 38,000 spectators, making it the largest swimming venue capacity in Olympic history. Even better, the organizers won't have to tear it down and drop the scrap metal in an alley in Watts or some shit when the games are over. We can just go back to using SoFi to host ridiculously expensive concerts that sound terrible because the acoustics in that place suck. All other Olympic events will be held in existing facilities like Crypto.com Arena, the LA Coliseum, and the Intuit Dome, the future home of the LA Clippers, which doesn't exist yet, but it will by then. In fact, Los Angeles is so committed to not building new facilities that some events are being held in Oklahoma City. One of those events being women's softball. As it turns out, the largest women's softball venue in LA only holds 2,000 people. Shocking for such a women's softball town. While it's not quite as huge as what's happening with women's basketball, women's softball has also been undergoing a bit of a glow up in recent years. When the Olympic plans were drawn up in 2017, 2,000 probably seemed like plenty of seats to accommodate women's softball. Not anymore. Go ahead, ask. Why don't they just do it at Dodger Stadium or something? Well, for one thing, that would require making Dodger Stadium available for the Olympics for 2 solid weeks in the heart of baseball season. Not going to happen. Also, I'm pretty sure there are differences in the dimensions between softball fields and baseball fields that would need to be addressed in some manner. Or maybe baseball is just sexist and doesn't let women play on their fields. That sport does value tradition a whole lot. Whatever the case, women's softball Olympic events in 2028 will now be held in Oklahoma City on the same field that hosts the NCAA Women's Softball World Series every year. That has to be welcome news for all those players who are facing the prospect of spending 2 weeks in boring old Los Angeles this summer. Oklahoma is all the earthquakes of California with none of the pesky nightlife or landmarks. Who wouldn't rather be there? Also, you're not going to believe this, but Los Angeles is completely bereft of canoe slalom venues, probably because we use all of our water to grow weed and avocados. But of course, Oklahoma City has one. So the canoe slalom event will also be held in the Sooner State. Again, this strikes me as a step in the right direction in terms of lessening the destructive impact the Olympics usually have on their host cities. That said, I also wonder how much of this has to do with the fact that Los Angeles is literally running out of water. It's really bad now, and there is nothing to indicate that it will be better by 2028. I have no doubt that moving canoe slalom events to Oklahoma and passing on building a new venue for swimming events has as much to do with not putting additional strain on the city's already tense water situation as anything else. Okay, last story, and it starts with a question. How much money would you be willing to spend tailgating at a Las Vegas Raiders home game? If you answered whatever the food and drinks cost, I don't know, you are right in line with most of the rest of the world. Nevertheless, the Raiders would appreciate if you'd at least consider spending $20,000 to do it instead. Starting this upcoming season, the team will be offering premium spaces for pregame festivities. That's a quote. In the form of 2-story climate-controlled party trailers Each trailer includes free food and beverages. That's nice, along with a 55-inch TV so you can watch early games featuring much better teams while you wait for the silver and black to haphazardly stumble onto the field. There's also a rooftop deck where Raiders fans can partake in classic tailgating games like ring toss, complaining about how it's bullshit your ex-wife won't let you see the kids more just because you drove drunk with them in the car once, and cornhole. Now, I know this sounds very expensive, but that's because you haven't let Raiders Vice President of Premium Sales Experiences, Panos Pappas, explain it. Here's a quote. People spend that kind of money on one bottle of tequila on the strip on a Saturday night. End quote. And okay, so right away I'm on board again. He's totally correct about this. The first, and I mean the first thing I do when I get to Vegas is find the biggest, most expensive bottle of tequila I can, and I knock that motherfucker out just to show everyone else I mean business. Sometimes that costs $1,000 or more. Here's the rest of the quote. Is it expensive? Sure it is, but there's a premium that comes with it. You're getting the full experience with it. Is it for everybody? It could be. You get all your friends together and you all chip in when you get there. End quote. I'm going to be honest. It sucks to hear that despite watching NFL football since the age of 8 and attending several games in person, I have yet to even one single time get the full experience on account of how I've never pre-gamed in a mobile cornhole arena that costs just slightly less than a house in Detroit. As far as the part about everyone chipping in, these things can hold up to 20 people, which would bring the cost per person down to just $1,000 each. Even then, I don't know what kind of high roller this guy thinks I am, but I definitely do not have 19 friends. And if I did, I'm fairly certain that all 19 of them being Raiders fans would constitute a criminal conspiracy of some sort. At least then we'd probably be able to afford that party shack. And hey, that's the episode. Thank you to everyone who did watch or listen, or who will watch or listen in the future. Please head to adamtodbrown.substack.com to keep up with what I'm doing in the world. And thanks. We love you. Goodbye.